Why do great empires collapse when they seem to have everything? Why do mighty civilizations lose their strength right at the height of their power? And could it be that the same thing is happening to us right now? Ibn Khaldun was a historian, sociologist, judge, and political thinker, and he is regarded as one of the early pioneers of modern historiography and sociology. But his most famous concept is Asabiyyah. What does it mean? The word comes from the Arabic root asaba, which means to bind or to connect. Asabiyyah refers to social cohesion, the sense of collective identity, loyalty, and unity within a group. It is what holds tribes, families, communities, and nations together. It is loyalty, mutual support, shared sacrifice, and a common goal. For Ibn Khaldun, Asabiyyah is the driving force behind the rise of every successful civilization, but also the key factor behind its decline. When Asabiyyah is strong, you find leadership, discipline, cooperation, and growth. When it weakens, luxury, corruption, disunity, and decay follow. Ibn Khaldun described a kind of biological cycle for dynasties and civilizations. This cycle follows 5 key phases. Phase 1, formation, the era of strength and unity. In this phase, a new power emerges, often a tribe, a movement, or a military alliance. They are tested, poor, disciplined, and deeply united in their Asabiyyah. They live simply, fight together, share suffering, and are driven by a clear vision to gain justice, power, or end oppression. As a result, they overthrow the old regime and establish a new one. Ibn Khaldun notes that in this phase, society is morally strongest. Discipline, spirituality, and justice are at the center. Phase 2. Consolidation, building institutions. Power becomes stable. The leadership organizes. A central government forms. Laws are codified. Bureaucracies emerge. Loyalty and unity remain strong, though small signs of privilege begin to appear. The elite starts to slowly drift from the people, but society remains productive and resilient. The memory of hardship keeps pride in check. Phase 3. Prosperity, the rise of luxury and comfort. The state becomes wealthy. Cities flourish. Standards of living rise. Achievements multiply. But with wealth comes the seed of decline. The next generation grows up in ease, disconnected from the struggles that built the nation. Discipline is replaced by indulgence, courage by comfort, selflessness by selfishness. The Asabiyyah begins to erode. Phase 4. Decay, corruption, greed, and power abuse. The elite lives in luxury while the people suffer. Government becomes corrupt or tyrannical. Reform is blocked to preserve power. Social bonds disintegrate. Inequality, mistrust, and decadence take root. The military is used not to protect, but to control. The empire lives, but is dying from within. Phase 5. Collapse, the fall of the dynasty. At this stage, the empire is fragile. Asabiyyah is nearly extinct. Internal conflicts erupt. Enemies take advantage of weakness. A new group arises, united, hungry, disciplined, and topples the old system. The cycle begins again. So we see, no civilization collapses in a single moment. The fall begins long before the last stone breaks. It begins with forgotten values, with comfort replacing character, and with people who no longer remember what built their strength. Ibn Khaldun's 5 phases are not just a theory, they are a warning. Ibn Khaldun's theory isn't just a historical framework, it is a mirror of our time. When we look around the world today, we can see societies moving through these 5 phases, and perhaps we see ourselves somewhere in the middle. The United States, The US began with a strong internal unity, a fight for freedom, independence, shared values. The Asabiyyah was powerful. Citizens fought for a constitution, for common ideals, but today we see deep political polarization, declining trust in institutions, widening economic inequality, identity crises tearing society apart. America still holds immense military and economic power, but internally the foundation is cracking. We may be witnessing Phase 4, inner collapse. Europe, especially the European Union, rose from the ashes of 2 world wars. Never again was the motto. A new kind of Asabiyyah emerged based on treaties, shared values, and solidarity. But today, unity breaks down during crises. Nationalism returns. Distrust in Brussels spreads. Societies are aging, spiritually lost, culturally disoriented. Europe seems to stand at the edge between Phase 3 and Phase 4. Wealth remains, but the moral foundation is eroding. The Islamic world. The Islamic world is a unique case, not following the natural dynastic cycle, but rather the result of a violently interrupted cycle, the destruction of unity. For over 1300 years, the Islamic world was politically united under the caliphate, bonded by shared faith, language, and leadership. Then came the Great Rupture. Colonial powers carved the Muslim world into pieces. Artificial borders were drawn, disregarding tribes, languages, and histories. Countries like Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Libya, Lebanon were created on paper, divide et impera, divide and rule. This was not a byproduct, it was the strategy. Because colonial powers knew the Islamic world was nearly undefeatable as long as it remained united, so they, firstly, fragmented it into nation-states. Secondly, promoted nationalism over Ummah identity. Thirdly, installed dependent rulers and elites. Fourthly, crushed any movement calling for a return to the caliphate, and this continues to this day. Today, every regime in the Arab world is externally dependent. Military dictatorships and autocratic regimes propped up by foreign powers, so long as they protect the status quo. Anyone calling for revival, unity, or khilafah is persecuted, imprisoned, silenced. Why? Because true Asabiyyah, based on Ummah, not flags, would disrupt the entire geopolitical game. This fragmentation is not historical coincidence, but an ongoing system, one maintained through media, thought control, puppet governments, and dependency. The Ummah today is over 1.9 billion strong, yet split into 50+ states with conflicting interests, rulers, and allegiances. Ibn Khaldun would see this as a tragedy of lost Asabiyyah, not due to weakness but engineered alienation. The decline we witness today is not unique. It follows the same patterns Ibn Khaldun described centuries ago. The erosion of values, the rise of division, the worship of comfort over conviction, these are not just political problems. They are signs of a deeper spiritual decay. But if history teaches us one thing, it is this: decline is not the end. It is a call to reflect, a call to return, a call to rebuild, not just systems, but souls. And perhaps the real question is not what has gone wrong, but what will we do now? And maybe, just maybe, this moment of crisis is also a moment of opportunity for a new generation to rise, not with slogans, but with sincerity. Because history does not only repeat itself, sometimes it waits for those who dare to break the cycle. If Ibn Khaldun was right, if every empire moves through this cycle, then one haunting question remains: is collapse inevitable, or is there a way out? The cycle, law of nature or warning sign? His model is like a ticking clock. First, birth through sacrifice and unity. Second, growth through order and justice. Third, prosperity followed by comfort. Fourth, division, corruption, self-indulgence. Fifth, collapse and rebirth. But is this fate or a mirror, a chance to stop repeating the same mistakes? Ibn Khaldun is clear. Collapse begins not from foreign enemies, but from the decay of internal values. The key lies within society's heart. The real question isn't, how do we stop the enemy? It's, how do we protect our own integrity? The cycle can be broken when we choose a new beginning, when we embrace collective responsibility again, reclaim ethical Asabiyyah, practice justice, not just demand it, see leadership as service, not power, anchor our goals not in the dunya, but in the akhirah. As long as material success is our only metric, we will repeat the same cycle. But if we return to taqwa, sincerity, and the Ummah's responsibility, history won't loop, it will rise. Nationalism versus Ummah, two opposing visions. One of the greatest obstacles to breaking the cycle is the ideological prison of modern nationalism. What began as a European invention was imported into the Muslim world after the fall of the caliphate and deliberately promoted. You are Moroccan, you are Pakistani, you are Egyptian, you are Iraqi, but you are no longer simply Muslim, not part of one Ummah. Now just a citizen of an artificially created state, taught to love a flag while forgetting your true root. This separation shattered our shared identity and our collective strength. What we see today, we are living in an age where many societies are deep in phase 4 and 5. The rich fight for more wealth, the poor fight for dignity, the middle class disappears, families fracture, trust in politics, religion, and media crumbles. AI replaces human warmth. Consumption replaces meaning. But worst of all, we feel the decay and think it's normal. And yet, there is hope. Ibn Khaldun's work is not a book of despair. It's a wake-up call, a warning, and most of all, an invitation to return. Because in every cycle, a new generation awakens, a generation that asks, who are we? What are we here for? Can we build something that outlasts our lives? Such people are not accidents, but products of will. When they rise, with knowledge, character, and vision, the cycle doesn't just repeat, it transforms. A way out, return to the roots. The answer is not a new system, not a new ruler, not a different flag. The answer lies in the values Ibn Khaldun upheld: adala, justice; Asabiyyah, a responsible community; tawhid, unity under Allah; shura, consultation and participation; taqwa, God consciousness. If a ummah returns to these, not power and wealth, then it will not collapse. It will transcend. And so, the true danger facing a civilization is not merely an external invasion or political crisis. It is the slow, silent corrosion from within. When principles are replaced by convenience, when justice is sacrificed for power, when truth is silenced by comfort, and when the people begin to accept injustice as normal. This is not just the story of ancient empires, it is the warning sign of every society that loses its moral compass. No civilization collapses overnight. It begins with forgotten values, with leaders who seek to preserve power instead of serving the people, and with a public that no longer believes change is possible. What we take from Ibn Khaldun is more than a historical theory. It's a mirror of our present and a warning for our future. Civilizations don't collapse overnight. Societies don't fall suddenly. It begins gradually. With lost values, normalized injustice, comfortable silence, and souls that are full, but empty. And yet, Ibn Khaldun teaches us, collapse is not fate. It is a result, and results can change. History doesn't repeat if we listen. We can't choose the time we're born into, but we can choose how we live in it. Will we just comment on the decline or commit to rebuilding? Will we follow blindly or renew with purpose? Every era has its test, but every era has its chance. And maybe you're part of a new phase, a return, a reflection, a restoration of what gave strength for centuries, unity, sincerity, justice, taqwa. To understand the future, study the past. The Ummah has survived despite invasions, divisions, colonization, betrayal. It has been wounded, but never erased. Why? Because in every generation, there are those who not only read, but understand, not only criticize, but serve, not only believe, but act. You don't need power to make an impact, in only sincerity and the awareness that what you do today could be the beginning of something new. Maybe your life is the start of a new chapter. Maybe with you, a spark begins, one that awakens others, a spark that remembers. Real progress is not copying the West, but embodying our own principles. True strength is not repeating old mistakes, but breaking them. Before we search for solutions in new ideologies, political systems, or imported models, we must pause and ask, what was it that once made us strong? What spirit united hearts across continents? It wasn't technology. It wasn't wealth. It was something deeper, a clarity of purpose, and a connection to Allah that shaped every step, every law, every dream. The Ummah doesn't need a new ideology. It needs a return to what made it strong in the first place. Because in the end, this Ummah will not be revived by systems, but by souls, not by slogans, but by truth. And perhaps a new cycle won't begin with a revolution, but with one soul who chooses to be honest, to take responsibility, to not give up. Maybe that soul is you.